Today we're tackling a question that I get all the time. How long should my podcast episodes be? And the truth is, there is no one answer for this. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Podcast Café, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Hayleigh Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey, and welcome back to another episode. I am so excited to be chatting all about episode length in this short episode. And we're just going to get right into it because, as I mentioned, this is a question that I get from every client that I ever work with. And even on social media, I get this question all the time. How long should my episodes be? The reason it's so confusing is because we see like Huberman Labs with 3-hour episodes, and then we see really short, like 6-minute episodes from some people. And there's no right or wrong answer to what you do, right? You could do a 3-hour episode if you have all the content. You could do a 6-minute episode if you can condense it into that. But there's ways to strategically do this, and that is what I want to talk about today. This really came to me because I just ran a marathon on Sunday, the Olympia Marathon here in Washington, and the entire time I was listening to podcast episodes. I did plan them out before I went because the last thing I wanted to do while I was running was try to find an episode that I'd be interested in. But throughout that run, and then also throughout my life, the length of episodes I want to listen to are actually different. So when I'm running, I love an hour-long episode. I love an hour-plus episode. I like not having to switch what I'm listening to as I'm running. If I was listening to a bunch of 6-minute episodes, I would lose my mind because they're not going to play right after another, right? I'd have to go and manually click it. So all that to say, this really got me thinking about why we need to go back to listening to our listeners and their habits when we are planning out our podcasts. If you have a podcast that is for busy moms, you're not going to want to do 3-hour episodes. That'd be really, you wouldn't be thinking about your listener if you did that. Now, if you were talking to medical doctors about really intense topics, you wouldn't want to do 6 minutes because they're going to want to know more than that. That'd be another instance where you're ignoring your audience. I always say middle ground, a 30 to 45 minute episode, I think is where most podcast episodes actually lie. But these outliers are what gets us so confused. So this is my advice to everyone that asks this to me, and what I really want you to take away from this Espresso Shot episode is your content should drive the length of your podcast. Solo episodes are usually shorter, guest episodes are usually longer, but there's things that you need to decide when going into this, when you're planning out your podcast, such as, like I said, do you want to do a deep dive? Do you want to share quick tips? This will determine the length a lot. Are you storytelling? Are you teaching? Are you interviewing? The content format matters a lot when you're deciding the length. So for this podcast, Podcast Café, these shorter Espresso Shot episodes are quick and punchy because I built it that way. My guest episodes are longer because I built it that way. I didn't just go into recording podcasts and say, well, let's see how long this is going to take. That is where I think a lot of podcasters mess up, because if you have 45-minute episodes and then you have one that's an hour and 30 minutes and then you have a 15-minute episode, which I see all the time, your audience is really going to have a hard time planning out when they're going to listen, and they're going to not really know what to expect from you. It also will affect your data and how your data is pulled, because it'll be hard to read what your audience listening habits actually are if you have absolutely no structure to the length of your podcast episodes. So I always think, like, keep it in a range or make it structured like I built this podcast. Speaking of your audience listening habits, they really do matter, because think about when they're listening to your show. Is it when they're on commutes? Are they walking? Are they driving their kids to school? Are they running marathons like I did? Are they doing their chores? Think about what they're doing. And this just comes down to knowing what you're talking about and who you're talking to. This is like the first thing I talk about with all of my clients is, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about it? And why do they want to listen? Right? So think about their listening habits. Also, think about who else that they're tuning into. When you get your Spotify Wrapped around the end of the year, you can see who else your podcast listeners are really listening to. If you go to your Apple Podcast page, like on your phone, if you just look up your podcast name, you can scroll and see like what other podcasts are recommended. The reason this market research is so important is because then you can see how they're already used to listening to podcasts. So do this market competitive research to see, does your audience, are they used to long episodes, or are they used to short episodes, or somewhere in the middle? Decide what you want with that, but having this information only helps you. And then I also want you to look at your analytics. I did an episode about this a few weeks ago. I'll put it in the show notes. But I want you to look at where your audience is dropping off. So the consumption time of your episodes. If you're losing listeners at the 10-minute point, it could be that they're not liking your content, but it could also be that that's when they are done with their walk or their drive, and then they're going back to it later. So look at the completion rates inside of your hosting platforms to see what length performs best. I have a client that does around 60-minute episodes, and she's super engaging, keeps them throughout the whole time. That's what people are used to listening to right now. They're like, I'm going to set aside 60 minutes to listen to this podcast, and I'm excited for it. So if you are looking at like the competitive research and you're realizing, oh my God, all of my competitors or other people in my industry are talking for an hour plus, I don't want to do that. That's okay. Consistency is always more important than the length of the podcast. It is way better to deliver 15-minute episodes than inconsistently drop 60-minute episodes. If it takes a lot for you to put out a 60-minute episode, that's just not the structure for you. Have a shorter episode structure. I have a client that does her episodes in under 15 minutes. That's because she's talking to VPs, CEOs, leaders, hiring managers. They don't have the time that they could invest in the 60-minute episode. She's doing these quick hit episodes. So once you start with a format, keep consistent with it, because like I said, that's what the listeners will expect. I also want you to test it out. If you're just starting your podcast and you're not sure what way to go, test out a couple different formats and see, do you like doing long interview episodes? Do you like doing short interview episodes? Long solo episodes, short solo episodes. You could also survey your audience, but I would really look at other podcasts in your industry. But if you are surveying your audience, just ask something like, do you prefer quick win episodes? Do you prefer deep dive? Do you like solo interview? Because these are the people that are going to be listening at first, so it's important to create the content for them. So just test it out. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, and that's what makes this such a big conversation in the podcasting space. If you have a podcast already and you've tested out these different lengths and formats, what I want you to do now is go listen to that data episode and look at your completion rates and see what your audience actually is enjoying. So that is all for this quick Espresso Shot episode. As I mentioned, I'll be sharing what I'm listening to every week at the end of these episodes. So lately, I've been loving the podcast Make Shift Happen. I'll put it in the show notes, but this has been a really fun podcast I've been listening to. It's called Make Shift Happen with Samantha Daly. It's all about wellness, self-help, manifestation. I love the way that she presents herself and her guests, and also the way that she talks about these topics, and I don't know, she just has a vibe to her. So that's what I've been listening to. I'd love to hear what you have been listening to, but thank you so much for listening. Let me know if you have any questions that you want me to cover in these Espresso Shot episodes, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.